The departure of the Romans in 410 left the British population open to the inroads of invaders from the north. There were mercenaries who came to help in the defense against Picts and Scots, but soon they began to settle in the country. In the course of time, they gained possession of all the land from the English Channel to the Firth of Forth. Then they followed the Christianization of the pagan English tribes, beginning in Northumbria with the work of Irish missionaries. In succession followed the inroads of the Danes in the 9th century. The rise of Wessex among the early English kingdoms with the important contribution of Alfred the Great, the establishment of the Dane law in England with the permanent settlement of Danes in the country, the accession of a Danish king in 1017, and the Norman influence on the English court which began before the conquest in 1066, all these events had their effect on the literature of the Old English period. Let's see the literary features of the Old English period. Many of the poems of the Old English period appear to have in them features which are associated with the pagan past, in particular Widsith and Beowulf. As time went on, Christian ideas influenced the earlier pagan. Of all the Old English poets, we have direct mention of only one Caedmon, though not one of the extant poems can definitely be ascribed to him. The name of another poet, Cynewulf, is known because of the fact that he signed his poems in runic letters at the end of 4 poems. Of the rest, we do not even know their names. Much of the prose and some of the poetry is translated or adapted from the Latin. The favorite works of translation were the books of the Bible, the lives of the saints, and various works of a practical nature. The difficulty encountered in reading Old English literature lies in the fact that the language is very different from that of today. Its vocabulary is for the most part native, though already there has been some borrowing from Latin. Its grammar shows declinable nouns, pronouns, and adjectives, and a more elaborate verbal system than that of today. There were 4 main dialects: Northumbrian, which was the first to produce a literature; Mercian, the language of the Midlands; Kentish, the language of the southeast, spoken in an area larger than that of the modern county of Kent; and West Saxon, the language of Alfred, which due to the political supremacy of Wessex became a standard and in which almost all the extant texts are preserved. Let's see some of the major Old English poems. First, Beowulf. The theme of Beowulf is continental Germanic, and it is likely that its subject lays long before its present version was composed. Beowulf, son of Ecgtheow, sails to Denmark with a band of warriors and rids the Danish king Hrothgar of a terrible mere monster called Grendel. The mother of Grendel, seeking vengeance for the death of her son, meets the same fate, and Beowulf, fittingly feasted and rewarded, returns to his native land. He becomes king of Geats, and after a prosperous reign of some 40 years, slays a dragon which had ravaged his land, but in the flight he himself receives a mortal wound. The poem concludes with the funeral ceremonies in honor of the dead hero. The pagan poems, Widsith, that is, the far traveler, usually considered to be the oldest poem in the language. It consists of nearly 150 lines of verse in which a traveler, more imaginary than real, recounts the places and illustrious people he has visited. The poem is of special importance from a historical point of view. Valdre consists of 2 fragments, some 63 lines in all, telling of some of the exploits of Walter of Aquitaine. The fight at Finsbury is a fragment of some 48 lines, finely told a description of the fighting of Finsbury, allusion to which is made in the Finn episode in Beowulf. The Battle of Brunanburh is a spirited piece of the famous battle which took place in 937. The Battle of Maldon describes the battle which took place in 993 with emphasis on individual deeds of valor and on the feelings of the warriors. It is particularly outstanding for the sentiments expressed by the warriors, especially those of the aged Brithwold. Some of the important poems in the Old English period includes the elegies. Some notable elegies include The Wanderer, The Seafarer, Wife's Lament and Husband's Message. Cadman Group. In his ecclesiastical history, Bede tells the story of the lay brother Cadman, who by divine inspiration was transformed from a state of tongue-tied ineffectiveness into that of a poetical ecstasy. He was summoned into the presence of the Abbess Hilda of Whitby, became a monk, and afterwards sang of many biblical events. The Genesis, Exodus, Daniel, and shorter poems, often considered as one under the title Christ and Satan, are of unequal merit. The Cinewulf Group. 4 poems contain the signature of Cinewulf in runic characters: Juliana, Eileen, Christ, and the Fates of the Apostles, are considered to be important poems in the Old English period. Though there were some prose writings of an official nature before the time of Alfred, there can be little objection to the claim frequently made for him that he is the father of English prose. The 5 important translations are the Pastoral Care of Pope Gregory, the History of the World of Orosius, Bede's Ecclesiastical History, Boethus' Consolation of Philosophy, and the Soliloquies of St. Augustine. Though it should be noted that Alfred's claim to the translation of Bede is disputed. Elfric, probably best known for his grammar, was a churchman who became abbot of Ensham in 1005. Several of his works are extant: the Catholic Homilies, 2 series of sermons suitable for delivery by priests, a 3rd series, The Lives of the Saints, written before 998, and translations from scriptures. Aelfric's flowing and vigorous style shows remarkable skill in the art of putting complicated thought into narrative form. It is natural and easy and is often alliterative. His colloquy is of great interest as a dialogue between master and pupils, not only from the literary but also from the historical point of view. Wulfstan was Bishop of Worcester and Archbishop of York. Several of his signed homilies survive, and there are many more which are believed on good evidence to be by him. His most famous piece is the Sermo Lupi and Anglos. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle is a prose collection of annals in Old English chronicling the history of the Anglo-Saxons.